Hello. Today I think we will try to mine just a few psukim from Parshas Boy to see how Rabbi Hirsch delineates in a way the core messages of Yetzias Mitzrayim and the formation of the Jewish people, and how the events of Yetzias Mitzrayim really served to create the identity of the Torah nation. Let's begin. Vayefu es habotzek asher hoitziu miMitzrayim. After the Jews had left Mitzrayim, they then finally had the chance to bake the doughs they'd taken out with them, ugais matzos, but they baked them as matzos, kilo chametz, because they were not chametz. Why were they not chametz? Ki gorshu miMitzrayim, because they were expelled from Mitzrayim. They didn't go voluntarily; they were pushed, violently pushed out of Mitzrayim. They weren't able to delay, to tarry, to wait as they had wanted to do, at least a little bit, at least to allow their doughs to rise. And they had no other provisions with them. They had prepared nothing for this journey into the Midbar. The Moishav, and it's a very strange word, not used in this way anywhere else in Tanakh, according to Rabbi Hirsch. The Moishav, the dwelling, let's just say for now, of the Bnei Yisrael, asher yashvu b'Mitzrayim, that they had dwelt in Mitzrayim, shloishim shana v'arba meo shana, was 430 years. Now, of course, you know that the Jews were not in Mitzrayim for 430 years, no matter which way you stretch it. They were there from the time Yaakov and his sons, the rest of his sons, came down to Mitzrayim, for a total of 210 years, according to Rashi's calculation. So the 430 years is going to take some explanation. Next pasuk, Vayhi miketz shloishim shana ve'arba meo shana, and it was at the end of these 430 years, Vayhi be'etzem hayom hazeh, and it was on that very day, Yatsu kol tzivos Hashem me'eretz Mitzrayim, the hosts, the forces, perhaps, the communities of Hashem, the groups of people who formed this nation of Hashem, came out of Eretz Mitzrayim. As a tangent, which is not really directly relevant to what we're talking about now, Rabbi Hirsch says, Tzivos Hashem implies a number of different groups of people, each with its own characteristics, and each with its own tasks, nonetheless all united in their service of Hashem. Because, of course, Klal Yisrael is a klal of many groups, a kahal amim, of 12 shvatim, or 13 shvatim, depends how you'd like to count them. Pasuk Mem Beis, Leil Shimurim Hu LaHashem. This is a night of protection, plural, Shimurim, Hu LaHashem, for Hashem. Now what that means we'll have to discuss. Lahutzi'am me'eretz Mitzrayim, to take them out of Eretz Mitzrayim, that Hashem took the Bnei Yisrael out of Eretz Mitzrayim. Halayla hazeh LaHashem. This night is for Hashem, again repeating for Hashem. Shimurim l'chol b'nei Yisrael l'deireisam. A night of Shimurim, again the same word, the same strange conjugation of this word, for all b'nei Yisrael for their generations. Now my grade 9 English teacher, I believe, grade 10 English teacher, was never shy to remind us of his important rule of exegesis. So he was not talking about Tanakh, I'll assure you, but that if something is repeated, it must be particularly important. This Leil Shimurim, or at least the word Shimurim, is repeated, and Lashem is repeated. It's got to be important. Let's take a look through the psukim one at a time and see what we can figure out, or see what Rabbi Hirsch has revealed to us. So, V'yoifu es habatzek asher hoitziu miMitzrayim ugais matzos. You remember, of course, that a Jew who on Pesach, after Matan Torah, who would eat chametz, would be chayav koros. That is, effectively, he is losing his share in his nation, whether it means he loses his olam haba, or it means he has a shortened life in this world, but it's a pretty serious thing. He's cut off. Nichrasu es nefesh ha'osa azois. Anybody who would do such a thing is cut off me'amav, from his people. It's a serious thing. You eat a little crust of bread, pretzel, on Pesach, you are chayav koros. Why should you be chayav koros? There is something about the fact that we were unable to allow our doughs to rise that is very central to our modern understanding of the Jewish nationhood and our relationship to Hashem. And it's tied up with the second half of this pasuk, Ki gorshu mi Mitzrayim, because we were expelled, they were expelled from Mitzrayim. Rabbi Hirsch talks about the three aspects of shibud, of this slavery. There was shibud itself, the avodah, the fact we were forced to slave, to work, to labor for our masters. There is the inui, the physical suffering, and gerus, the fact that we were strangers, we were dispossessed, we didn't have a share of the national good that might come from our work. All these three aspects of our enslavement were still present in the final moment before our redemption. That is, even though perhaps the day-to-day slavery had stopped, we nonetheless were not yet masters of our destiny. And we see this evidenced by the fact that we couldn't even hang on another 18 minutes to allow our doughs to rise and to allow us a decent meal on the way out of the country. We were expelled. We were still at the mercy of the Mitzrim. And Rabbi Hirsch likens this to a woman giving birth. That the woman is, at this point, when she's in the hospital about to give birth, she has no say over what happens. It's going to happen. This baby's coming. The baby has no say in what's happening. He's coming, or she's coming, and there's not much he or she can do about it. But Hashem is still watching. There may be a painful process that's playing out down below, but Hashem is watching, Hashem is guiding. This relationship between, the final moments of the relationship between the Mitzrim and the Bnei Yisrael was also something beyond each of their control. And the Bnei Yisrael were, until those last moments, still slaves and still completely subjected to these three aspects of galus, but there was Hashem watching. Let's move on. So the 430 years, as we said before, is a bit of a problem. Look also in Bereshis Tes Vav, where it says, "Vayemer Avram Yodea Teda Ki Ger Yezaracha Be'eretz Lo Lahem." This, of course, comes from the Bris Bein Besarim. Hashem said to Avram, "You should know that Ger Yezaracha, your descendants will be strangers Be'eretz Lo Lahem, in a land not theirs. Va'avadum ve'inu Eisam Arba Meo Shana." And they will enslave them, and they will torture them 400 years. Here it says 400, and 400 also does not equal 210. So we have an interesting problem of chronology. Let's look at the word moishav, which, as I said, is never used, Rabbi Hirsch tells us, is never used to describe a length of time. It's often used as a noun, I suppose, as a place. This is where these people lived. It is in one instance, and that is in Sefer Malachim Aleph, Perek Yud, Pasuk Hey. It is used to describe a style of living, or a style of behavior, where Malkas Shva, who might be the queen of Sheba, or might be the royal court of Sheba, of Shva, were inspired by what they saw in Shlomo's court. And they described it, how inspired they were by Ma'achal Shulchanai, the food of his table, Moishav Avadav, and the way his servants, his courtiers, all sat, the way they were placed, the uniforms perhaps, the arrangement around the table, the way they sat and perhaps interacted with the king. They were impressed by that. Umayim and Masharsab, Malvushehem, etc. But Moishav there means a style of living, a style of sitting, a style of behavior. So now, if you look back to our pasuk, Moishav b'nei Yisrael asher yashvu b'Mitzrayim, the style of life, the way the Bnei Yisrael lived there in Mitzrayim had been a lifestyle they'd endured and experienced for 430 years, or 400 years. 430 years would be from the moment that Avram was told at the Bris Bein Besarim that Yodea Teda Ki Ger Yezarecha, and 400 years would be from the time that Yitzchak was born. Either way, when Avram at that point had Zerah, had children. From that until that point, he didn't have children at least no children that would be subjected eventually to this galus. Therefore, Moshe B'nai Yisrael means their lifestyle, the lifestyle of gerus, and of being controlled and not being in any way masters of their own destiny, would last these full 430 years or 400 years or 210 years, but the full time would be an experience of loss of control or lack of control. Ki gorshu, as you look in Pasuk Nalmantes again, Ki gorshu mimitzrayim, they were expelled from Mitzrayim. They didn't have a say in the matter. They were completely at the will and whim of their masters, right till the end. It's critical that we be aware that that was our existence, because otherwise we might think, well, there were 600,000 healthy men, adult men there. It's not such an amazing thing that they were able to fight their way out on their own strength and on their own initiative. On the contrary, it's an amazing thing that they didn't do it earlier. You might think that their leaving Mitzrayim was somehow natural through the force of our own will, of our own choice. But the fact that we are reminded every year by the requirement to eat only matzah and not chametz is a reminder that we were in fact at the will and whim of our masters until the last moment. We were gorshu, we were expelled from Mitzrayim. We didn't even want to leave at that time. We were not able to come out on our own. It was Hashem's doing. Now, let's move on to Pasuk Mem Beis. We'll skip Mem Aleph, as we've seen everything we need to see, I think, from there. Mem Beis says, Leil Shimurim Hu La Hashem. Shimurim, you'll notice, of course, is in the PL form, and it is plural. PL suggests an intensity, and the plurality of it suggests a lot had happened. There was care that Hashem had chosen in a very active, intense way, and in many, many ways, at many times and in many scenarios. This night had been prepared over a great period of time, centuries in fact, with great, great attention to detail by Hashem. For what purpose? Lahutziyam me'eretz Mitzrayim. To take the Bnei Israel out of Mitzrayim. Laila Hazeh, this night, LaHashem Shimurim, is meant to be for Hashem as a time of great care over a great period of time. L'chol Bnei Israel l'doraisam, for all Bnei Israel, for all their generations. We were prepared, or let's say, history was allowed to unfold by Hashem and was guided by Hashem in a way that would prepare us for our national calling. The fact that we were slaves until the last moment and we were helpless until the last moment was one critical element of our being trained and built into the Am HaTorah. It had to be that way. This night, when we would go through a transition from Shibud LeGeula, a sudden transition from Shibud LeGeula, was a night that had to happen, and it had to happen just this way. It was planned by Hashem. Leil Shimurim Hu La Hashem. And now that it's been planned, and now that we're aware of it, and now that we have the many mitzvahs of Pesach, particularly the Isser of eating chametz and the mitzvah to eat matzah, now that we have all that, we are ready to transform this night of Pesach into a Shimurim, a Laila Hazel Hashem Shimurim, a night of our care for Hashem, for all Bnei Yisrael l'doraisam, for all their generations. This is the foundation stone of Jewish national identity. We were helpless. Nothing could happen. We could not redeem ourselves. It had to be Hashem doing it. And it had to be Hashem doing it in just this way because it imbued within us many of the characteristics necessary to become an Am HaTorah. And in Mirz Hashem, we will meet again, hopefully next week, maybe even sooner, and see some more of some of the fundamental ideas of Rav Hirsch and Torah and the Jewish people. Hope to see you soon.